let me start out this way. There are 5 very, very special shapes in the universe. Anyone who's been involved in architecture or sacred geometry or any kind of geometry or various fields of engineering will probably know these shapes. The most familiar one is the cube. There's 5 of them altogether. I'll just quickly give them to you. There's the tetrahedron, tetra meaning 4, because there's 4 faces. And there is the hexahedron, or the cube, hexa meaning 6 faces. Then there is the octahedron, meaning 8 faces. And the icosahedron, meaning 20 faces. And finally, the dodecahedron, meaning 12 faces. Now, each one of these, or all 5 of these things, has something very special about them that no other forms in the universe have. There's certain rules, and the rules are, if you could create a form that has only one edge length throughout the entire form, only one face, this only has one face, same edge length, only one angle in it. This is 90 degrees in this one. Every angle is 90 degrees. So there's only one angle, one face, and one edge, and all the points of this substance would fit on the surface of a sphere. That criteria comes up with 5 shapes, the ones I just gave you. And believe me, they have really tried to find other ones, and they don't exist. There is a way to create 2 more, which are based on motion and movement, but that's a high-level subject. It's not important for right now. And so you'll say to yourself, well, again, so what? What about these shapes? Well, they're called, they were eventually named after Plato, so they're called the Platonic Solids. Though I don't know if that's a really good name or not. He was not the one that invented it. And of course, nobody invented them. They've just been here since the beginning. And his teacher was Pythagoras, who was the first one to introduce them into our new world that we're talking about. And Pythagoras got his information from Thoth, because he said so, and who brought them from much older. They have found these shapes that man has made 20,000 years ago. 20,000-year-old stones carved into the 5 Platonic solids. And they don't know. I don't even know if they know who did them, but they know they're that old. If you read into sacred geometry books about these 5 shapes, I'm trying to keep these things from reflecting in people's eyes. They're like mirrors. Maybe I should get one that's not quite so big mirror. And if you read books like Keith Kirchlow or Buckminster Fuller or Robert Lawler or any of these guys, you begin to realize the importance of these. They're like the major primary building blocks of the universe. Their relationship is just everywhere in all kinds of ways, throughout nature and everywhere. And it's just amazing how many places there are that they have importance in. And yet, when you come right down to it and you ask any of these guys or read any of these books to try to find out what generated them, where did they come from, what is the source that was behind these things, there's silence. Nobody knows. And but what the angels say is, there's your source. That's what created them. It was the first system of knowledge that came out of Metatron's cube. You're now looking at, well, with the lines I've got on this page right now, you're looking at 4 of them. And I'll explain where the 5th one is in just a moment. And I'm going to pull them off of here one at a time so you can see them, okay? We'll talk about what they are in a little bit. Let's just get them out of here first. If you take out this hexagonal pattern out of, and inside here you see another hexagonal pattern, and then the three lines that go through the middle, and erase all the rest of them, you'd get this. Does everybody see that? Does everybody see that that's a cube within a cube? Who doesn't? It's a cube looking at it from this edge. Can you see that now? You can? So you're looking at a cube from this view. Well, that's where your first one is. Now, if you came back here and you were to take this triangle here, and this triangle here, and then this little triangle and this little one in here, and then the lines that go through the middle like that. And you do that, then you get this. It looks like a Star of David. Now what that is, though, is a three-dimensional shape, a very specific one, which is hard to see what that is in there, but if you shade it in like this, it's a star tetrahedron, like this. Can you see it? Does everybody see it? So when you get the tetrahedrons, you get two of them interlocked. One interlocked with the other one. All five of these shapes are masculine energy. But everything has a polarity. So even within maleness, there's femaleness and maleness. And within femaleness, there's maleness and femaleness. And the same way with geometry. Though all five of these shapes are male relative to the sphere, some of these shapes are female and some of them are male. We'll see about that in just a moment. If you were to take out this, you see this rectangle, which happens to be a golden mean rectangle. And if you were to take that one out and this golden mean rectangle that's down in here, and then it's taking the big one, if you were to take this line that goes from here up to here, and that line that goes from there to there, you'll notice that there's 1, 2, 3, 4 sides, and then you'll have, from there, you've got another one coming down to here, and down to here, and what that forms is an octahedron. I'll come over here and I'll show you. So what you now have is one of these, only it's sitting at this angle like that, with one of the faces flat to the other one. So it's got a flat part like that. It's sitting like that to the screen. Does everybody see that?
It's hard, definitely hard.
It's harder, I know. It's harder. But you've got an octahedron. Mathematically, that's the view of this thing. Because when you turn, like this is a square, right? That's a square. But when you turn it, it becomes a rectangle. And if you turn it just right, it becomes a golden mean rectangle, which happens to be the view that is right there. So it's an octahedron inside of an octahedron. Now the next one even gets harder. That's where it goes. If you erase certain lines of the original Metatron's cube, you'll come up with this. And this one is an icosahedron. You're looking at this form up there. And I know it's hard. You have a pentagonal cap on the top, a pentagonal cap on the bottom, and 10 little triangles around the middle. And you can actually count each one of them. This is one face, two faces, and then this one coming over here is three faces. This is the fourth face, and this is the fifth face, forming the cap. There's one on the bottom. And then if you carefully count the triangles moving around here, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is 6, 7, 8, 9, and then this one is 10. Your 10 triangles move around there. Now that is identical to what you were just looking at a moment ago. Oh, this is a drawing by Sulamith Wolfing. And with the Christ child inside of the icosahedron, it's extremely appropriate because this is the doorway to Christ consciousness. And baptism is the doorway into Christianity, right? This, in ancient terms, was water. Like fire, earth, air, water, ether, this is water. And this is the baptism of the doorway into Christ consciousness. So you can see the line is straight across in the back, like it was on the other one, straight across on the bottom, forming the 5 different patterns. Now the fifth one, the dodecahedron. I mean, they told me it was there, and I started looking for it, and I couldn't find it. And I looked, and I looked, and looked, and looked, and looked, and I spent 20-something years looking for this thing, and I never could find it. And Mackie went to look after me looking for 20-something years, and in 3 days, she found a part of it anyway that was the first time I'd ever found anything. I'll show you what she found in just a moment. She did something I never even dreamed of. She took Metatron's cube and rotated it by the phi ratio, and this grid came out, which was incredible, which she calls Eve's grid, the Eve's grid. And I'll show you that in a moment. And she didn't even know what it is, and I'm beginning to understand what that one is right now. But so I started looking for this shape, couldn't find it, and about 2 weeks ago, in the last workshop, one of the students in here said, "Hey, you didn't connect a certain point to a certain point." I go, "I didn't?" And I realized on here's the whole Metatron's cube. I had not connected this point to that point all the way around in the whole pattern. And so I had 12 missing lines on Metatron's cube. I don't know, I just never saw it. And so this is truly Metatron's cube here. Now that's all the spheres connected by all of them, like they instructed me to do. And now with this pattern, you're now looking directly at a dodecahedron. It pops right out. Here it is in the red lines. Everybody see that? Can you see the red lines on the page in there? The angles of these things, the lines drawn from there, exactly make the reflecting angles of all the faces, and you get a pentagonal shape there, one there, and one there. These are the other 5 sides at the sharp angles, and it wraps back around, and you have the other side of it also. I got to see it for a second. If you were to draw that line in there, that's the pentagon on the back side. There's the pentagon back on the other side. The whole thing is totally 3-dimensionally wrapped all totally around, the entire thing, the whole thing. It's completely there. And I went, wow. And so you're the first ones that's ever seen this. Nobody's ever seen this before. And I was very excited about that. So, and there'll be another one, a bigger one on the outside of this whole thing that'll enclose all this if you want to work it through. So there were all 5 of the shapes. This is a clearer pattern of it. And I have a whole bunch of other slides if I wanted to do it, showing you how you can take the spheres out of the flower of life, and there's a way where you can show the ratios, come up with the length of an edge of a tetrahedron relative to a cube, relative to a hexagon, relative to a 5-sided edge of a 5-sided pentagon relative to a hexagon. All 4 of those edges are all lines that are lengths found in Metatron in the flower of life, but they're all interrelated to each other. And this was the pattern that Mackie found by turning Metatron's cube into a certain ratio, the phi ratio. It has a central 5-sided pattern with a full 5 that come off of there, and then if you just take one more off of each one of those, that's an unfolded dodecahedron. But this is an interesting pattern. There's a man named Penrose who made the Penrose pattern. What's this? Roger Penrose? Is that his name? Anybody know? I can't remember. And he did, see, they've always tried to make five-sided shapes that will cover a floor, tile patterns, but they never could figure out how to do it. And so he came up with this little shape here and another little shape, which was a wider angled one. If you took that shape that would form in there and put those two together, and you can make pinrose patterns that will cover a flat surface. And it was kind of a game for a long time. And recently in Scientific American, they would have people, it was just sort of like this game that was going along between all the Scientific American people who subscribed to that, to who could come up with the newest pinrose pattern. And then out of that, somebody had an insight. You see, there's something called diffraction patterns where they shoot electron beams, X-ray patterns rather, down through crystalline structures, and they can see where the atoms are located. And they only were able to come up with certain patterns and thought that there were only certain kinds of crystalline structures in existence. And then one day somebody theorized that there had to be these based on the pinrose patterns. And recently, and we're talking about like 2 years ago, they discovered a new kind of crystal in existence, which the crystal has always been there. We just suddenly became aware of it. It's called a quasi-crystal now. And they've now been able to come up with the patterns, the understanding of it, and it's opened up a whole new level of crystallology, I guess. Is that right? Crystallology? And the meaning of it is they suspect that pretty soon they're going to be able to make metals, say, about 10 times as hard as diamond, for example, based on this. And lots of other applications will start coming out. This is one that they don't know about yet. This is one based on pentagons, and the other one. Every single line in here is in the phi ratio, golden mean proportion. Every single thing in it, and all crossing patterns. Every line that you can connect together synthetically through there is golden mean ratio lines. And it's got to be one of the primary grids. It's an area of research I'm going to get into at one point. But eventually in quasi-crystal studies, I bet you they come up with this grid as being one of the primary generating sources of the patterns.
Is it similar to a honeycomb?
To a what?
Honeycomb.
No, that's a hexagonal pattern, which is a little different. So you got these 5 shapes. Now we showed you where they came from, how they came out of the flower of life through the fruit of life pattern. And I want to just quickly show you that the number relationship. This one has 4 faces, 4 corners, and 6 edges. And the tetrahedron is a real special one. The hexagon, or the cube, has 6 faces, 8 corners, and 12 edges. The cube, in sacred geometry, they have something that's called a dual. A dual is, if you connect the faces, this is one way of getting to duals. You connect the centers of the faces of this one, and what you get is an octahedron. Okay? They're duals of each other. And look at the numbers. This one has 6 faces, 8 corners, and 12 edges, and this one has 8 faces, 6 corners, and 12 edges. Then you have the dodecahedron, which has 12 faces, 20 corners, and 30 edges. If you connect the centers of a dodecahedron together, you get an icosahedron. And again, 12 faces, 20 corners, 30 edges, 20 faces, 12 corners, 30 edges. They are duals of each other. You can take this as your major building block, and you can take 2 tetrahedrons and slip them together into a star tetrahedron like this one. Take 2 tetrahedrons, pass them through each other into a 3-dimensional star of David, and you have a cube. Okay? You can take 5 tetrahedrons and put them together in an icosahedral cap type thing, And those will assemble together into a dodecahedron, but it takes 60 of them to do it. And then the dual of that will create one of these. Now the reason I came up to this thing about 60 and everything is I've been asked many times about why there are 72 orders of the Great White Brotherhood. And if you've probably read this many times before in other places, I don't know. But there are 72 orders, and the first order is is Alpha and Omega, Order of Melchizedek, and the last order is the Brotherhood of the Seven Rays. Those are the two orders that I'm connected with, and I know very little about what's in the middle. And but the reason there are 72 orders is because these 72 orders have one thing. They are to create the Christ consciousness grid around the planet. And that grid is made up of these two shapes. And the creation pattern is that there's 60 tetrahedrons in here, which is the building block of this, and there are 12 points that are the center points in the center of each one of these that form the icosahedron. And the 60 plus the 12 is the 72. And so each one of the orders is working with a different facet or area of the grid of the Christ consciousness to create this on the earth. Remember, we started as an octahedron, and that's a view of an octahedron from there. That's that view of the octahedron. I like to use different ones. There's three symmetrical views of each one of these. And so remember, we started with the octahedron, then we went to the sphere. That's the central column, which is the neutral column. Over here, the tetrahedron and the cube is literally your left brain. Remember I said how the triangle and the square was the logical side that was forward on the male? And this is the female side, the right side of the brain, either of a person or a planet or anything else. And this is based on 5, the pentagon. And so is this based on 5, again, when you see that it's this thing. And so this is female, this is male, and this is child or neutral aspect of the things, of life. They have, in terms of mathematical relationships, they're endless. You could just go on. You could write reams of books about all the mathematical possibilities that are all in there. They're all interconnected again and again and again. One thing I do want to mention is in alchemy there is something called fire, earth, air, and water that we hear about so often. And the ancients believed that the fire, earth, air, and water and 2 other substances were the key to everything. They were really, they usually only talk about those 4. That's because they leave out the most important one. They always keep that one secret. And that one's sometimes referred to as ether. But ether and prana are the same thing. Or ether and prana and tachyon energy are the same thing. It's all the same thing. And again, this was the most sacred shape of the ancients. And this is the one that was ether. They all have amounts, and I'll tell you what they are right now. This is according to the Pythagorean school and tied back to Egypt. This one here, the tetrahedron, was fire. And it's a pyramid. There's 3-sided, 4-sided, and 5-sided pyramids. And pyramid means fire in the midst. And the cube is earth. It's denseness and matter. And the octahedron is air. It's the 8th element of the periodic table. And the icosahedron is water. And the dodecahedron is ether. And the little sphere, the sphere, I have a little sphere. The sphere is voidness. There's 6 elements that create the universe. Voidness, fire, earth, air, water, and ether. And they all have shape, as everything does. And they happen to have the primary shapes of the universe. So these 6 shapes of the sphere, the tetrahedron, the cube, the octahedron, icosahedron, and the dodecahedron are the ABCs of the alphabet, of the whole thing. They are what create the underlying structures. All structures are based upon them. And these are just like some of the mathematical relationships, how one thing fits inside the next and fits inside the next. In sacred geometry, it's called nesting, where one cube will fit to the next one, will form the next one, will go to the next one, and you just couldn't do this normally. It acts like magic. It's amazing what it can do. To show you one shape, here's a cube. Does everybody see the cube? Can you see the centers of each of the faces are connected together, forming a little tiny octahedron in the middle? Does everybody see that? Can you see it? Does anybody not see it? It's a little one of these guys in the middle, sitting like that. So you have those two linked together. At the same time, it's a star tetrahedron. Which is one of those guys that you see sitting right there. So the star tetrahedron has an octahedron in the middle of it. If you're going to make one, you can just take an octahedron and make those little triangular shapes and stick them on each of the faces, and you got one of those. And then you can make fancy ones like this. Isn't that pretty? Okay, now, I'm about to take this abstract information that came out of the first system of the fruit of life and apply it directly into life so you can see how life uses it. We're going to first look at crystals, and then we're going to look at biological life forms like you and see how in these two areas that these are used. Before I do, you're going to ask questions.
I don't understand those two, why those are feminine.
It's kind of like understanding why a straight line is male and a curved line is female. It's something that you begin to intuit after a while. The longer you work in this stuff, you keep coming up with these patterns tend to be things that are associated with male, and these patterns tend to be associated with female. For example, the hexagon, the cube is either a square or a hexagon or an octahedron. I mean, an 8-sided. Anything that's 4, 6, or 8 are associated with a cube. If you look at life forms that are on Earth, that are on land, if you go into water, which is female, you go into the oceans, you'll find an overwhelming number of them are based on 5. Like the starfish, for example, and the sand dollar, and you can go on and on and on and on and on. A lot of this 5-ness. Now, there's going to be exceptions on both sides. Like there's going to be the what do you call it? The octopus, for example, has 8. But if you list them all, and if you see them, you'll see this huge amount as 5-ness on here and 6-ness on the land, showing you can see where that the water aspect pulls things more that are female and more on the 5-sided. So it's like you start working this, and it's more like an intuitive thing to come up with this. And then when you look at the brain functions, and you start looking at the logical patterns of the male, they keep coming up being 3-sided and 4-sided, and the female side is 3-sided and 5-sided.
But isn't all the males inside the females there also?
What? all the males inside the female.
Aren't they contained in all those female?
Each one of these contains the others in various ways.
Okay.
It's in a circle around the outside.
Oh, the female contains them all, yeah. The female contains all the male. But the male also contains all the other ones, too. There's one male form that does. There's two forms there that are very special. The sphere is the mommy, and the cube is the daddy. It's the big daddy, and the sphere is the big mama. And the mama will contain all of the 5 female shapes, but the cube will also contain all the other 4 males, including the mommy. None of the other ones will do that, but this one will. And by that, in a very special way, you can take a sphere, symmetrically you can put them in a cube. You can take a sphere and slide it right in there and it would symmetrically touch perfectly. And then you can take this one and it will fit in like that. If you made the size just right, it will just slide right in. One of the tetrahedron edges become the diagonals across the cube. And that's another one of the keys, by the way, is the diagonals. The diagonals, as you'll see as this unfolds, is almost always where the hinge is. It's where the secret of anything you're trying to find will usually be found along the diagonals. And so the tetrahedron and the sphere will fit in there. The octahedron is easy because you just connect the centers of it and that will slide right in there perfectly if you get the size just right. These two female forms, though, it doesn't look like they would ever go in there symmetrically until you notice something about them. And that is, if you put them just like this, so that they're a hexagonal view, you have an edge in the front and another edge exactly the same in the back. And then you have a symmetrical edge along this side and another symmetrical edge along the top and the bottom. So you can take this and just go right inside of a cube, and this little edge will fit right in the center of each face, symmetrically and perfectly. And you can do the same thing with this one. You got to turn it just right to like this. Now there's an edge across the front, and there's another edge exactly the same across the back. There's a left, and there's a right, and there's a top, and there's a bottom, and it'll just slide right in there. And so the cube, by its very nature, contains the proportions of all the other ones, including the sphere. And so the cube and the sphere are the two most important of these shapes. This is why, for anyone who has studied Walter Russell, anybody know about Walter Russell? Walter Russell's work, the reason it worked, he didn't know anything about sacred geometry. If he had have, he would have leaped in consciousness. He didn't know it existed, or he would have been super brilliant. He's already super brilliant, but he would have really went out there if he'd have known about this. But he picked the two right shapes. He picked the cube and the sphere to be the basis of his philosophy. And because he did, he was able to do a great deal of things that could have chosen other shapes and he would have been incorrect. And just even in the Bible says that the throne of God is so many cubits this way and so many cubits this way, etc. And when you make one, it's a cube. And the chair that all the Egyptians sat on, have you ever noticed it? It's a cube with a little back on it. The cube is a really, really, really important male form. It's probably the most male form that there is, whereas the sphere is the most female form that there is.
For the purpose of raising one's level of consciousness or ascending or whatever, what would be the most ideal structure to have, to live in?
You mean to sit in?
To live in. Like if you could build your own house any shape you wanted to.
There's all kinds of people trying to study that right now. And I really don't know. I don't think that that's going to really matter that much. Relative to the... Once you get the Merkaba going and that aspect of your fields going, it won't matter what the shape of the building you're in. It won't matter anything, nothing, no outside influence can influence what's internally inside the Merkaba. And so But there is, if you want to look at Abram Mills' work, which I'll give you, he makes this shape for people to get into, a big one that you can climb into, and has reflective things which are incredible. It really is amazing when you're inside of these things. Yeah, because what it does, how they reflect energy back. And my thought was to do a lot of Wilhelm Reich's work with the doorbusters, and you know what that is, and he's created mirrors for life energy that reflect prana using steel wool and cotton in certain thicknesses, and it reflects it just like a mirror. And you can make these blankets. Of course, they're illegal in the United States. Yeah, because they don't work. But if they don't work, then who cares? What difference does it make? But they do work, because if you lay in one of these things, you can only stay under there about 30 seconds. You go screaming out from underneath it because they're so powerful. He used to make these rooms that looked like outhouses, because he didn't know anything about shape. Made out of these walls that were steel wool and cotton, and steel wool and cotton, and certain things. And you go in there, and it reflects all your life energy back at you. You can't stay in one of those rooms more than about 15 minutes. I mean, you'll kick the door down to get out of there. It's healing to a point, but if it gets too much, it will actually make you sick. If you get too much, it's just like you get OD'd on it. But they could make those. I've always wanted to make one of those things like this, where it really reflected. Not only did it mirrored it, but reflected it and focused it. You could put it right into a certain chakra. You'd probably stay in there for like 2 seconds and jump out or something. But I've never done that kind of stuff. There's a lot of real fun experimentation that you could do on this, and the effects that these have on consciousness. They do affect you dramatically. You can just sit in them and feel the differences. You can also look at the work of, say, Greg Hogue, who of Metaforms, who makes all kinds of pyramidal structures and things that you can sit in and experiment with that. For example, if you sit inside of a pyramid where you got a 51 degree, 51 second, 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 24 second degree angle, it's the angle of the Great Pyramid, and if you sit in there and you align it properly and you go to sleep, your first couple nights might be a little strange, but after that, you'll find that you get about 3 or 4 hours. Has anybody ever done this? Yeah. You probably found the same. I'll just tell you what I found. You can tell me if you found the same thing. I found 3 to maybe 4 hours of sleep, and you wake up, and that's it, baby. You don't need any more. And what did you find? Huh?
I just wanted the dimensions again.
Of what?
Of the pyramid.
It's just the Great Pyramid. You can get that anywhere. It's the angle, 51 degrees, 51 minutes, 24 seconds. And it focuses a pyramid reflects a sphere perfectly if the angle is right. And so it reflects your life force energy right back at you, and you just regenerate very quickly. This is an X-ray pattern of a barrel. I think it's a barrel. Yeah, it's a barrel crystal. It's an X-ray diffraction pattern, and it is one of the closest means of actually seeing into crystals to see how their atoms are arranged, and physically looking in there and looking at them. I just wanted to show you this one and notice how the atoms are arranged, and you can actually see the flower of life pattern in there. You see it? So why do atoms just happen to arrange in these sacred patterns? This is one of a salt crystal here. It's another diffraction pattern. And if you notice, a salt crystal is a cube, and you see the cubical nature of these patterns in there. Now, these are atoms. Each one of these little black spots is an atom. And if you notice, the atoms are spheres. Now, what we've really got here is this little speck of nothingness. If this was an atom this big, you got a little tiny speck you can hardly see with these electrons that are probably somewhere around them. The electrons are moving around the central core at 9/10 the speed of light. That's the speed of light is 186,200 miles a second. That's miles a second. And this is a speck you can hardly see. And these little electrons are moving around. In 1 second, that little electron has gone around that point that you can't even see, something like 160,000 miles. It's inconceivable. I mean, I used to sit there in physics going, nah, they're pulling my leg, you know, thinking, nah. And so they're moving so fast as they move around that you can't see them, but they form what's called an electron cloud, or a sphere. It's a spherical cloud on the outer shell. And so all of your atoms that form all of the fabric of the nature are little spheres. One of the sacred, most sacred forms of the reality. It's such an obvious one that we don't think about it. We live on a sphere. The earth, the sun is a sphere, the moon is a sphere. You know, all these spheres are all over the place, and it just goes right over us. We're so used to it that we don't perceive the sacredness of the simplicity of the shape. It just goes right past us. And so the whole fabric is made out of spheres. There's spheres all over the place. Light, all the light waves moving through space are all spheres. We normally think of a light wave doing this kind of thing, right? A little thing going through it like that. But you don't have this little thing going down there through across space. If you took, say, a light inside this cube and flashed it, and these were flashed in all directions, well, you don't have a cubical pattern of light moving off from there. Even though you look down it and you see a cube, if you looked back from it a few thousand miles back, you'd see a cube. But the pattern that's going off there isn't cubical, because a light wave that leaves the center of this surface going straight up in 1 second is 186,200 miles away. This one is also the one that's going off the point of the edge is 186,200 miles away. And when you think about how far that is, and the distances between those two beams are almost identical, the only difference is this little tiny bit of difference. You couldn't see the difference. In 1 second, you have a near perfect sphere of light leaving that cube. In 2 seconds, that little tiny difference, which always is always there, approaches zero very, very quickly. It never actually reaches it, but so you have these waves of light expanding off of objects that are spheres. And so all your light waves out there are all these just interacting spheres of light waves. Even if you have really big things, then it just means that it takes longer for them to become spheres. That's all it is. So we've got this sphericalness all over the place, both in cosmic levels, microcosmic levels. The atoms are all different sizes of spheres depending on how many electron shells they go out from and what their internal structure is. And depending on whether or not they have all of their outer electrons or don't, and by what, they're going to either have a positive or a negative charge on their outer electron shell, and that is the primary basis of chemistry. What things will join and will not join together, though there are other factors. Size has a big factor in all of it. And all of those things, again, are little spheres. They join together in patterns that look, these are the basic ones, the linear one, of 2 big ones and a little one in the middle, which is a straight line, or 3 big ones and a little one in the middle, which is a triangle, or in a tetrahedron, or in an octahedron, or in a cube. And they now know about the other 2, the icosahedron and dodecahedral patterns, which are the rest of the possibilities. And everything, all other possibilities come out of that, which I'll be able to show you in just a moment. And then, so you get say, 8 little atoms that come and form a cube, and who knows why, but they form this perfect cube. And then you get 4 more that come over here and link with these 4 and form these these three-dimensional structures that are called lattices. And so you have a cube connected to a cube, connected to a cube, etc., like this. And these are the lattice structures that form crystalline structures in metals and these kinds of things that exist throughout nature. Again, no one knows why they form these particular patterns. All they know is they do. Sometimes they get very complex and forming all kinds of geometrical shapes inside of there. But if you were to carefully look at the way the atoms formed in geometrical shapes, you would find that you would be able to trace them back to one of these 5 shapes, no matter what the crystal lattice structure is. Does not make any difference. I don't care what it is. You could still always trace it back to one of the 5 shapes, which I'll try to show you in a moment. First of all, since we're talking about crystals, there are a lot of crystals out there. Who's ever been to the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show? Okay, all those people, just raise their hand. You can ask them, and they'll tell you. There are definitely a lot of crystals in the world. There's so many you can't believe it. And they're finding new ones all the time, ones they've never seen ever before, with new atomic structures they never knew existed. Every year they find new ones. And they're, I really don't know how many there are. Does anybody have any idea? If I have to guess, I'd say 250,000 different, 250,000 different kinds of crystals. That they know of. I'm just guessing at that. I really don't know. There's so many. And the Tucson Gem and Mineral Show has about 8 or 10 hotels with some of them, all the floor structures and every single room in them filled with nothing but crystals. And then you can go into these big auditoriums with nothing but crystals all over there. And it's truly amazing. And it's just, life is, every single mathematical possibility, life has tried it and created a different crystal to form it. Well, all of them will be arranged into 6 categories. There are 6 primary categories that no matter what the crystal you grab a hold of will fit into one of these 6 categories. And those 6 categories are called isometric, tetragonal, hexagonal, orthorhombic, monoclinic, and triclinic. They're all functions of a cube. And it just says, right, this is straight out of a mineralogy book. You can go up here and it says, by distorting, the starting point for all crystal pattern systems is the cube, and by distorting the cell, other cells can be derived. The isometric system is a cube. Tetragonal cube system is a cube with a little piece on top. The hexagonal system is just a cube looking at it from that view, which is a hexagon. And the orthorhombics and the monoclinic and triclinic systems are cubes where you simply change the angle in them. And so there are certain angles that are distorted. And so you've got these, all the basic systems are a function of a cube, another one of the sacred shapes. Now this is where it starts getting a little interesting. This is a fluorite crystal. It's in the shape of an octahedron. Can everybody see it? It's in the same shape as this. It didn't, approximate. It's not perfect like this. It's approximate. It didn't grow, it didn't get cut this way, it grew this way. And actually, to be a little more precise, the matrix of the atoms are in the form of an octahedron. And it comes in these sheets, and whenever you strike it, it breaks into these patterns. So, and I would never do this, but if I was to drop this on the concrete, it would break up into a whole bunch of little tiny octahedrons. This is also fluorite, only it's in a whole bunch of cubes. You probably can't see these, but I'll pass them around, let you see them. And there's just a whole bunch of cubes in there. Well, if you give this cubical fluorite enough time, it will grow into this one. A couple 100,000 years in the right conditions. You give this one enough time, it will grow into this one. and the two will, one will become the other. In mineralogy books, they try to describe this by showing this flat pattern. But down here below, can you all see these? There's something in crystallology that's called truncating. You can truncate a structure to create a different crystal. That simply means you can either cut off an edge and you do it equally all the way around, or you cut off the corners equally all the way around, or you cut off the faces equally all the way around. And that's called truncating. And there's lots of ways that can be done. Well, in this case of a cube, you would truncate the corners. So you cut each of the corners off equally. If you keep doing that, first you cut them off equally all the way around, and you get this structure. And then you keep doing that equally all the way around, you'll come up with this structure, and then you just keep right on doing that, you'll come up with an octahedron. Or the other way around, if you take an octahedron and cut off the tips of it, like you cut off each one of these tips, and you just keep doing that, it will turn back into this one, and then into this one, and then into a cube. It'll go either way. You can start with this one and get this one, or you can start with this one and get this one. And we know that these are duals of each other, so it kind of makes sense anyway. But this is one way of showing it, and that's one way that the textbooks try to describe how these two crystals can do this. It's not saying that that's how it does it. It's just saying that that's a logical way to explain how in the heck the atoms change from cubical to octahedral and back again, doing this. This is a real big piece of fluorite. It's about this big around. You don't find them that big anymore. I mean, they're real, real, real rare. And somebody left it on a ledge in the sunlight, and the bonds that hold the atoms together are so weak that the sunlight, the excitation of the sunlight, cracked this thing. And if you notice where it cracks exactly along the octahedral lines. Right. Up in this corner is a cube. And if you truncate the edges, you cut off the edges all the way around, it moves to this structure, and you keep doing it, comes to this one, and the thing turns into a dodecahedron. This becomes this just by cutting the edges off of a cube. Now, this is pyrite. It grew into a cube. It's a little bit longer axis. It's not a perfect cube. The one end grew a little bit bigger than the other one. But this grew this way. If you look carefully, it looks like somebody cut it and polished it. Nobody touched it. They just took it straight out of the earth. And it came that way. And this one is a perfect dodecahedron. It's just like this, only little. And you'll have to come up and see these later. But it looks like somebody cut this and shaped it, because it is exactly like this, only it's pyrite. It grew this way. Nobody touched it. It grew into this little dodecahedron. Pyrite does exactly the same thing. If you give pyrite enough time, it will grow into cubical. Give it enough time again, it'll grow back into dodecahedral. The same living structure will keep changing shape. It'll oscillate over long periods of time between these two different structures. Well, the dodecahedron, if you come down here and you cut off the points of the dodecahedron, it immediately goes from this to this, just by truncating that. Now, each one of these is a different category of crystals. There's a whole spectrum of crystals. I'll show you in just a moment here out of this book. And if you keep truncating the dodecahedron, it not only turns into a nicosahedron, if you keep doing it, the thing will turn into an octahedron. It'll go into one of these. And then if you take one of these and cut off the tip, it turns into this one, which is a real, real interesting one. this is the shape right here. This is called a cube octahedron because the angles of this, it was originally a cube that's been truncated this way, and the angles of it form an octahedron, which you can see that it came from. It's in between the cube and the octahedron, actually. One view of it is a square with a diamond running like this. This was considered the most sacred shape in existence by Buckminster Fuller. He felt this was the key to everything. And he had a real good reason why he came up with this. He gave it his own name. He called it a cube equilibrium. And the reason is because this is one of them right here. Put it like that. Is that it has a unique property that no other shape known has. And that is that it can, by rotational aspects of the bonds, can become all 5 of the Platonic solids. And to show you, for example, it's already a cube in its basic structure, but by rotating this, it comes down and becomes an octahedron. You see? Can everybody see what it is? If you rotate them this way, it will become a tetrahedron. Of course, I can't line all these bonds up perfectly, but because of this is a physical structure. So you've got the cube already, the octahedron, the tetrahedron. The icosahedron has to be rotated. So looking at this green square in the front, if you rotate it so that the green square forms 2 equilateral triangles, and you do that all the way around, for the blue one, the green one, the orange one, the red one, all the way around, you have to do it perfectly. Just look at the green square. So there's 2 equilateral triangles in there. Then that one is an icosahedron. And if you can make the bonds go out the other way, which you can't do with this structure, you got to do it on a computer or something, then it will form a dodecahedron. It contains within it all 5 of the shapes by rotational patterns. And so he felt that there was something real special about that one, and derived much of his philosophy from this one shape. There's another man named Gerald Langham. It's D as in Gerald, like with a D, Gerald. And Gerald Langham's work was given the name genesis. And he was a brilliant person who he did a lot of amazing work in botany. He saved South America during World War II by creating a corn that was like a weed. You just threw it out and it just grew. And they were all starving to death, and he saved them, really, saved lots of lives. He was studying the sesame seed, and he went in the sesame seed and then deeper and deeper and deeper, and he got in the middle of the sesame seed and he found this little cube right in the center of it. And what that little cube doing down in here? And it's kind of the open sesame seed. It opened his life in long ways. He realized that the cube was the key to seeds. And we're only talking about a few things, but you can go into viruses, for example, are all geometrical packages. Diatomaceous earth, which is the original life patterns on the earth, are all geometrical structures. You can go on and on and on. We're only talking about crystals here and a few other things, but you can carry this through to seeds or all kinds of other areas of life too. And he found that the cube was in there, and then he found these 13 rays that came out of this cube that structured the seed. And then he just took off on that and found out that the same pattern was around the human body. He says, wow, we're just a big seed too. And he then started getting very philosophical and went to metaphysical school and graduated with a PhD in metaphysics in L.A. And wrote a thesis that I read, which was really, really good. And since then, he created this thing called Genesis and has thousands of people that follow him. He's one of the people I think are really great because he took the knowledge that he had learned about the grids around the body, and he showed a way that you could use it. Not just information, but he showed a way to apply it. And he did that through dance, through sacred movements of the body. And so he has you move in this particular way, kind of like Tai Chi, where you're moving through and touching the various grid fields and becoming aware of them. And it's very powerful. There's a lot of people who have been deeply influenced by this work. Darrell Langham. He just died. He was in Arizona. But if you're interested in that, this paper I'm going to be giving out has Human Dimensions Institute at North Carolina's phone number on it. And they have one of the teachers there, so she knows all of that work and where you could go to get that work. But so there is this grid also around the human body. And both him and Buckminster Fuller were more concerned with this grid that was around the body than the star tetrahedral field, which is the one that we're going to be using. If you keep going, it turns into a cube, and then from a cube you can truncate again through these patterns over to this one, which is called a rhombic dodecahedron. That happens to be the dual of the cube equilibrium. Those two are together. There's first the 5, which is like the pentatonic scale, and then there's 2 more that are added, which is the 7 notes of the octave. And then there's another 5 polyhedron that are coming after that, which makes the set of 12, which corresponds with the 12 notes of the chromatic scale. There's actually shape associated with all of these things, but we got to tie this down a lot stronger before we can even begin to talk about that. Anyway, as you keep moving through here, you'll see how each one of these shapes keeps coming back through one of the 5 Platonic solids, always. And no matter, each one of these, by the way, is a different set of crystals. This is a crystal book. It's called Rocks and Minerals, and I'll leave it up here and you can look at it. And for example, over on this side of the page over here, it will show the atomic structure. In this case, it's dodecahedral. And these are all the crystals in here, different kinds of crystals that are dodecahedral. All of these up here are tetrahedral, and these down here are cubical. These are all cubical crystals over here. Some of these are unusual shapes that when you first see them, until you truncate them back and find out what the Platonic solid is that is hidden behind them. These are all rhombic dodecahedral crystals, and these are all octahedral crystals down here, showing the patterns up here. These are all truncated octahedral crystals. These are hexagonal crystals, which are a function of the cube. These are hexagonal crystals also. These are truncated cubical crystals where just the tips are cut off up over here. And each time you change the internal structure or the way the atoms arrange themselves, you get a physical crystal that looks entirely different. Totally different, has different third-dimensional worlds, third-dimensional attributes. So I think you can get a pretty good idea here. What I'm saying is that that you have, and this is only some, there's thousands and thousands and thousands of these things. But no matter which crystal you get, you find out what its crystal and atomic structure, how the atoms are lined up, and you'll find that you can truncate it and come up to with one of the 5 Platonic solids, showing clearly that the 5 Platonic solids is the underlying key underneath all of your crystalline structures. And all of those 5 Platonic solids came out of one of the informational systems out of the fruit of life, which came out of the flower of life. These are the kind of polyhedron that I'm talking about, each one being having a different quality, and your atoms arranging specifically to them. These are the external angles that you see on the crystals will always reflect the internal angles of the atomic atoms. This is also a crystal. It's a water crystal called a snowflake. And it's based upon hexagonal patterns of crystals. No two supposedly have ever been the same. And they're directly at a flower of life manifestation. This is a periodic table of the elements. The elements are all the elemental atoms, different kinds of atoms that create the molecules that make the fabric of the reality. There is 2 atoms on this chart. They're both special. There's 1 atom on this chart that we will all recognize as being real special to us, and that's carbon, because that's the basis of organic chemistry, of all life that we know, what we call life. But there's another atom on this chart that demonstrates on a chemical level the functions of life absolutely equally, just as well as carbon. And it's the one that's 1 octave below it. This is carbon. There's a fold in this page here. So there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. In the same grouping, directly below it, is silicon, which is what almost all of your crystals are made out of on Earth. Carbon and silicon demonstrate to the chemist equally the principles of life from a chemical level. Now, by that, what I mean is carbon will make all these incredible different bonds and shapes and forms and just this vast array of different chemical possibilities, and it'll link with just about anything it comes in contact with. So will silicon. Exactly the same. It will make these chains and these links and all these various things, on and on and on, and it will link with just about anything that comes near it. It will bond with just about anything. And so chemists for a long time figured that maybe there were silicon life forms on Earth, but they never ever found any. And so they'd only found carbon-based life forms, where spirit had only entered into carbon-based bodies. And so then science fiction movies, taking up on this theme, began in the 1950s, made several movies about the possibility of silicon life forms on other planets, because it appeared, though, that was possible to do. So they dreamed up these things. Those guys who made those movies never dreamed or realized that there were silicon life forms on Earth at the time that they did it. And it hasn't been until just recently that we have gone down deep miles into the crevices of the oceans, way down deep. And we found that there are life forms down there that are alive and living and have no carbon atoms in them at all. They're totally silicon. There are sponges down in there. They're silicon sponges. They're completely alive. You'll see them in a picture that's going to come up here real soon. Am I going to do that? I don't know if I'm going to do that or not. But anyway, we have them right here, right on Earth. They really do exist. On the other hand, we have crystals right here, right now, and we look at these guys, and we say, nah, they're not alive, they're hard, they're not soft like we are, and they don't breathe. So we set these criteria up to correspond with us, and we don't think of them as being alive, but they are, and they're ancient beings. And they've been in one body. We think Thoth has been in a body for 52,000 years, and we go, wow, that's a long time. Well, this one's been there for maybe 500,000 years. Same body. You know, a lot of crystals go back for 1.5 million years in the same body. And spirit is in there. And what's happening on Earth right now? Our relationship with silicon is so powerful. We're not aware. The Earth that we live on is a round ball. It's a silicon ball. The crust of the Earth, which is 30 to 50 miles deep, is made up of 25% silicon. And it reacts with anything that comes near. And that crust, though we pick up Earth and we look at it in dirt, we don't see. But when you get down there just a tiny bit, the entire crust, which is 30 to 50 miles deep, is made up of 87% silicon crystal. It's almost 90%. We're on a little crystal ball moving through space. We live on silicon. And so we don't think of them, we don't realize how closely we are linked with them. And we are almost unconsciously making a marriage with them right now, with not even really thinking about it that much. Our computers are all made out of, they run on silicon. They run on one of the other life forms of the planet that is alive from my point of view, and conscious, and aware, and has feelings, and everything else, and thinks, and can add and subtract really fast. And they like people a whole lot. And we're creating instruments that are filled with their essence, but based upon our level of consciousness. We're creating instruments where you have to plug in a binary sequence that goes on a phonograph record to get to the memory, which is based on the way we think. There's other ways that could be done. And if you were to just take that computer with just a little bit of changes, that computer would be alive. It would be self-aware. And you wouldn't have to do a lot of the things that you're doing right now. We will come to that because it happens in other planets. Eventually, the silicon and the carbon of a planet link across. And when that happens, the planet has two eyes. It opens up and it has two viewpoints and the communication happens. We'll eventually get there soon, very soon. I believe 1 more year, 2 more years, definitely by the end of the century, that we'll have self-aware computers that will change history forever. It will never be the same again. And especially when you see what we're going to explain something about them in a little bit. And however, once we see the possibilities of what will be capable through a self-aware silicon computer, it does not take very much longer to realize that we have the same crystalline structure around us, and the same capabilities and possibilities are within us without the computer. We can do anything a computer can do. We can add and subtract at those speeds. We can do anything the computer can do without the computer. They're just showing us the possibilities of life. They're a lot older life form than we are. They've been around a lot longer. Those are my thoughts on it. You don't have to believe it, of course. It's real easy to see how those 5 shapes are connected through crystalline structure. It's just because they are so obviously related to it. But when you look at an organic structure like this fetus of this baby, or yourself in a mirror, or a tree, or a bug, or something like this, and I say to you, the same 5 structures are creating those shapes, and just as much as in the crystalline structures. I mean, it just doesn't look like it. You don't see any geometry in there. Organic chemistry tends to be soft and curvy and doesn't have any straight lines and all this kind of stuff. We don't see where any of this is, so it just doesn't seem like it's possible. And until you look very, very carefully, because hidden in organic chemistry is all these very things that we just saw in crystals. In order to do that, we're going to begin to look at conception. We're going to start at the very, very beginning of human life and work our way out from there. And in conception, the conceptual process that I'm about to show, though we're going to be talking about it in terms of humans, will apply to all life forms known. That's A-L-L, underlined. All of them, the entire spectrum of life on this planet that we know of, will all move through these same exact steps in the same exact way, though we will be talking about humans. So we'll begin with, the process begins with a sphere, the first sacred form. The ovum is a round ball. It's a really round ball. It's not kind of round or sort of round. It's perfectly round. It looks like the moon, if you could see. It's, you take a chicken egg, I always say that when you hard boil it. You take the yolk out of the middle. Have you ever done that and you look at it? It's really round. It holds, that's the most female form there is. And so the female chose that shape. If it was the male that had the womb, it would probably be a cube. What? So this is a sea urchin ovum with a little sea urchin sperm on there. At least I hope so. And so it begins as a sphere. Now, the membrane of the ovum. It's called the zona pellucida. Remember the word zona pellucida because I'm going to refer to it a whole bunch of times, which is just the membrane of the first cell. And inside the zona pellucida, there are these two little bodies that are called polar bodies, and they're embedded inside the membrane. And then in here is a liquid, and inside that liquid is another sphere, which is called the female pronucleus, and it contains 22 plus 1 chromosomes. They always say plus 1 because the other one is the one that determines sex. It's really just say 23 chromosomes. The process that I'm going to describe, mitosis, is what that's called, cell division, is going to begin, if this was the ovum here, this little sphere, the cell divisions, the cells that are going to divide are going to get littler and littler and littler inside of it, but the outer surface of the zona pellucida is going to remain fixed. It doesn't change size. Okay, that's kind of an important part of this, which you'll see later. And the ovum, which you can actually see with the naked eye, it's 200 times bigger than the average cell in the body. You can see it without a microscope. It's the only one you can. It's this huge single cell that, again, the division will get smaller and smaller and smaller inside it until it reaches 512 cells, at which point the average size of the human cell will have been reached. And so the process first goes within itself to figure out how it's done, and then it turns around and expands beyond itself. This is even in the geometry. Here is the ovum saturated with a sperm. Now you probably read in your books that it takes one sperm to conceive a baby. And now they've known actually for some time now with the use of electron microscopes that that's not true. That was only a partial truth. The whole truth is that it takes 10, 11, or 12 sperm that join around the 11th, 12th, or 13th sperm, which forms some kind of energy package that allow that one single sperm to go in. The single sperm cannot go through there by itself. It needs these other 10 or 11 or 12 guys to be able to get them through. And it's my belief that this is exactly what Jesus was doing. Jesus came to a round ball called the earth, and he gathered up 12 males called his disciples, which he absolutely had to have to do what he had to do. And with their energies allowed him to penetrate into the earth to create a new consciousness. And So much is this analogy kind of true that even as you watch the shapes that are formed, at one point this will become a cube, as you'll see here a little later. And we did exactly that thing. Our consciousness, prior to Jesus, saw the earth as being round. And then we went to the point in the area where it was conceived in Europe, and went to the point where we saw the earth as being flat and cubical. And then it stayed that way for a period of time, and then Copernicus came along and turned it back into being round again. And that's exactly what happens. It starts out as being round, it turns into a cube, and it goes back and being round again. So anyway, you can make up your own mind on that. I don't know, these kinds of things are hard to say for sure. So anyway, it definitely, though, does take 10, 11, or 12 sperm to allow this one to go in. And he enters in and begins swimming toward the pronucleus. The next thing that happens is the tail breaks off of that little head and just disappears. Just goes away. And the little tiny head expands out very quickly and becomes a perfect sphere, exactly the same size as the female pronucleus. This exactly the same size is very important, I believe, judging by what I know about the geometries, because the next motion is that they merge through each other and form the Vesica Pisces, the image of the first day of Genesis. So at this moment, they contain all the knowledge of the universe between them by their very geometries. And they can't form that perfect image unless the male is identical to her. And I have a belief here, though there's no scientific basis on it. Just as each person in this room would penetrate into the darkness a certain distance, so our natural abilities that we have a different size sphere around each one of us, I think each one of these sperm also has a different size sphere around them that she can sense. And I don't think that she's going to allow any of these guys in here unless they have the perfect size, unless the resonance of that sphere is identical to hers. And for this reason, I think that there could be a male and a female that could try all they want and never have a baby. Because if their spherical sizes of their natures are too different, they won't correspond. Because it's so obvious to me from this fact here that this must take place. And then on the very next step that happens after that, they merge right through each other and they become a single cell, and they contain the 46 chromosomes of life. This is called the human zygote, and it's the first cell of the human body. There it is. That's a mouse, though. Doesn't look like one, does it? But there's it's starting to go to number 2 there. There's the fertilized egg of a mouse. That's an electron microscope view of one. The next thing that happens is the 2 little polar bodies migrate and they find a place that is north-south, which I believe lines up with mommy-daddy. And with mommy, rather. They tune to her field. And from the north, and I believe it's from the north, a tube runs down to the south and just sort of appears out of nowhere very quickly. It's a little thread. It's actually, I don't show it here, but it's attached at the top and the bottom. Tube right down the center. And then the chromosomes of the first cell break in half and line up along that tube, half on one side and half on the other. And what you have here right now is, as you see the electromagnetic fields of your own body later, you're going to see that this is really an abstract view of you when you're an adult. You're going to see that you have a north and a south pole. You're going to realize you have a tube down the middle, that you have a sphere of energy around that, and that half of you is on one side and half of you is on the other side. It's really very close to what the ultimate end will be, though the actual dimensions of your body are also about to be contained in here. The actual precise dimensions of the adult human. It takes couple more steps here before that takes place. So the next thing that happens is you then go from 1 cells to 2, And there's the mouse egg again, showing that they've taken off the zona pellucida, so you have the two cells there like that. Now, in most of it goes from 2 to 4. Most of your books, it shows this. They didn't really know for a long time what happened, so they usually just put them in a square or something like that. They didn't know what shape it took, but now they do know. And the shape is that it forms a tetrahedron, when the four cells line up on the 4 points of this tetrahedron, and lined up with the north-south. It could be the other way around, too. You got 3 of them up here and 1 down here. Now, to show you that using geometry, this would be the zona pellucida here, the inner surface of it, and these are the 4 cells lining up like that, which is the tightest compact way that you can get 4 cells into a sphere. And this would be a top view if you were looking down from below. It'd be like putting 3 and 1 more stacked in the middle, so that if you connected the centers together, you get a tetrahedron. And this is an actual view of a tetrahedral mouse egg. Here's your first cell, your second, your third, and this back here over here is the 4th one. If you went, don't look at this one here. You went across here, you'd get a triangle, and then if you ran those triangles over to this other one that's back over here, the bigger one, you would get a tetrahedron. This is beginning to go to the next step. It's real hard for them to get, this thing is going so fast that it's very hard for them to get it exactly at the proper stage. So now you have you, you exist as a tetrahedron. And the next thing that happens, it goes from 4 to 8. And what it does is it forms another tetrahedron facing the other way and forms a star tetrahedron, like this. So that the 8 cells are on there, which looks like this. It forms the egg of life, the second sacred form that came out of the second rotation of Genesis. This is what you would see. This particular level of life, according to the angels, is one of the most important stages of development of organic chemistry, or of human beings or anything else. Every life form passes through this stage. Flies, everything else, even mosquitoes. They all go through it. And they all end up looking like these 8 little spheres. And what science knows about this is that they can't, first of all, they can't tell any difference between these spheres. They appear to be absolutely identical. It would be like 8 identical twins in the room. They can't see any differences at all. They can't detect any differences at all. And though usually you can tell a difference between one cell and another, they can't on this one at all, not at this level. And they found that they can sever the bonds of this right between these two and get 2 of these like that and make 2 identical beings. Or they can sever the bonds this way and make 4 identical beings. I don't know. In the works that I've read, I haven't seen them do this yet, but theoretically they could sever this into 8 different ways and make 8. Well, I don't know anybody that's done that. And what the angels say is that these 8 cells, first of all, are immortal relative to your body. They remain with your body as long as your body is alive, unless something terrible happens to that part of your body and they get blown away. I don't know what that really means spiritually. But they'll remain in your body. Most of the cells in your body will be regenerated. They die and new ones are formed every 5 to 7 years. So every 5 to 7 years, depending on what your cycle is, you completely replace your body with a brand new body. But these cells stay there from day 1 all the way to the end. They never die. That's not science saying that. Science doesn't even know where they're located. And the angels also say that the precise location of them is down near the base of the spine. And that it's straight underneath the perineum, going up from there, and a short distance up from underneath and there, up inside of there. It's where they're located. Which happens to be the geometrical center of your body. If you were to measure your body from that point at the base of your spine to the top of your head, and then from that base down to the bottom of your feet, same distance. It's exactly the same. That is, if you take 100 people and measure them. You might be a little longer, and you might have short legs or something like that. And they said that this is closer to who you really are, though it may seem kind of funny. They said it's really more who you really are. There's these 8 spheres. At one point I'm going to talk about Egyptian Tantra. We have 8 aspects to ourselves. That's the reason why there's 8 electrical circuits moving through our body. There's 8 totally different aspects to ourselves. And we have 8 different, completely, totally different lives associated with ourselves, according to Egyptian Tantra. At the right time I will talk about this more. We need to lay out more before I can really get into that. But their concepts of Tantra and life and everything is far more expanded than Hindu or Tibetan or Taoist or any of these other ways. So anyway, this is one of the stages of it, and it's the egg of life, the first pattern that we're talking about. We're going to come back to it and talk about it many, many, many times more again. It then goes from 8 to 16. This is the view of those 8 cells from, this is one edge of it, this is a hexagonal aerial view of those 8 cells packed in there. This is the electron microscope view of that. It's starting to twist a little bit. This one doesn't count. There's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and it'd be 7, 8. They would form a cube in there. That's the other thing is the start, this thing is the same as this thing. Everybody sees that, don't you? Which is a cube also. So they go from tetrahedral to star tetrahedral to cubical. And then at that point it goes to 8, and this little guy forms one out on the edge of each one. Let me see if there's... I didn't put it in there. But it first goes out one on the out. It first becomes a cube within a cube. One goes out here on the other edge, just like that comes out of Metatron's cube. The cube that comes out as a cube within a cube, and it forms a cube within a cube. And then that's the last time it gets symmetrical. Because if you make one of those models, which I've done, you first you go to 8, then you go to 16. Then you take 16 more and you put them in symmetrically. Only there's 2 places left over, no matter how you do it. There's 2 empty spots. And so when you go to 32 and you take 32 and you fill in those 2 spots and you try to make it symmetrical, it just starts going funny. And that's exactly what happens in life. You know what I mean? The little perfect cube forms a cube within a cube, and then it starts doing this funny thing, and it starts becoming a blob. Like this. And the blob starts growing in such a way that it becomes hollow and turns into a sphere, a hollow sphere. And then at the North and the South Pole, led by probably the 8 cells, is what I suspect, a tube begins to drop down through the middle and go down and connect to the south one like this. This is an actual electron microscope of it. This is the hollow ball. At this point, there's 512 cells in here, and and it's a torus, by the way, too. the north pole becomes this, and this toroidal pattern forms down through the center and forms this structure through the middle. And you have a structure that is identical to an apple. It looks just like one, only it's hollow in the middle. Can you see this core running through here? They've ripped this apart so you can see inside of there. And what then happens is that this opening here becomes your mouth. The other end becomes your anus. This end, inside of this core becomes your internal structure where your organs are. These become your lung structures in here, where this is. And this is the last time that we have everything in common. In other words, every life form goes from, just to recap this, every life form goes from a sphere to a tetrahedron, to a star tetrahedron, to a cube made in the form of this one here. Then from a cube, it turns back into a sphere again, and then becomes a torus and the shape of the apple. All of these are all these sacred shapes that we saw out of the Metatron's cube. And every living form known that becomes the apple, and then from the apple, then it depends. If it's a fly, little wings come out, or if it's a dog, a little tail starts wagging. You know? Or if it's a horse, it wants to gallop. Or if it's a person, we sort of stand there and wait for it to happen. But we all have this in common. That's why I really do. I think the Bible said that the tree, the fruit tree that we bit of in the Bible, the tree of the knowledge of good and evil that got us into this place in the first place, was an apple tree. And the symbology is so deeply involved in here that these were the writing of the Bible, and a lot of these sacred documents were done by people on real high levels that knew how to talk on a lot of other levels than just one. And like the Bible, for example, what Stan Tenten has found, not only is the Bible have a story going through it, but he's found that every single letter in the Bible has deep mathematical significance, showing all the laws of the universe, how the universe was created. The very first line of the Bible, the Hebrew Bible, and he can show you this, describes in detail the Great Pyramid. Mathematically describes it in detail. The first thing, lays it all out in Hebrew. And so we're just not to the place yet where we're quite able to function in those kinds of levels where you could read a book at about 100 different levels. The Emerald Tablets were written on 100 different levels. And you can read that from 100 different levels of consciousness and read something totally different into it, depending on who you are and at the time that you're reading it. So, you now begin to get the feel about how the geometry is a function inside of yourself, as well as the crystal patterns and these kinds of things. This is only one of the informational systems that we're going to be talking with. What I just showed was the internal structure at the beginning of life forms. You can see how this geometry is used. But we're now going to jump out to the outer edge of the life form. We're going to look at the electromagnetic fields that are around the body, seeing how they correspond with these inner conceptual fields inside of there. So that you can see that these same shapes are around your body as well as in your body. And from there, it leads into some real interesting areas that we can begin to discuss. This is just a matter of record. Tchaikovsky, he had already been involved in underwater birth for a long time. They've been doing that for, I don't know how many, he had probably done at least, if I have to guess, maybe 20,000 births that were underwater. His daughter was in the 20s, I think, when this took place. It wasn't a real long time ago. And they had taken a woman to the Black Sea to give an underwater birth in the ocean. And they were sitting there all prepared for it, and the humans were all there, and she was kind of off the shore, hanging out in the water to give birth to this baby. And I believe it was these 3 dolphins came up, and they just pushed everybody away, and they just took over. And the dolphins come up when they do this, and they just do something to the whole system. And she gave birth to this baby with almost no pain or anything. It was a real phenomenal experience. And that began not just underwater birthing, but having dolphin midwives as birthing. Now people are actually doing this now, and there's something about the sonar that the dolphins do at the time of birth. And the dolphins go nuts. I mean, when they see, first of all, they love children. If you go swimming with dolphins, if there's kids around, they'll all go to the kids. If there's no kids, they'll go to the women. If there's no women, they'll go to the men. And if there's a woman that's pregnant, forget it. She gets total attention. And, I mean, that little baby's the greatest thing of all. And so they just go bananas when they see a human having birth, and they love it. And they can do things that are really, really amazing. And a lot of the dolphins the babies that are being born out of there, at least what's going on in Russia, are becoming really extraordinary children. So far, from everything I have read, out of all these babies that have born underwater birthing, there's not one of them with an IQ under 150. And they all have extremely stable emotional bodies, extremely strong physical bodies. They seem to be a superior race in one way or another. And the births that came out of France, there were over 20,000 births that came out of France also that were, and I read all the works of these guys, and one of the things they found is that they had these big tanks that they gave birth in, and when they first started doing it, they had all the instruments all laid out on tables and everything like that with a doctor standing by in case there was a problem. And they didn't have a problem, and they didn't have a problem, and a year went by and they didn't have a problem, another year went by, and finally 20,000 births went by without one single complication. Not even one. By now, they just got the thing stuck under a thing under there. They said they just put them up and put them away. He says, because there just isn't any problems. For some reason, when a woman is floating in water, it seems like most of the complications just solve themselves. I don't know if they know why or not, but they do. And I got to spend some time with a woman who was an assistant with Tchaikovsky in Russia, and she brought back a whole bunch of the films you've probably never seen, because they were directly films out there, and I got to sit there and watch all this stuff. And I watched 2 movies of 2 different women giving birth who not only were not in pain, not only were they neutral, they were having an orgasm. They were absolutely having an orgasm having this baby. It was total pleasure. And which I know that's the way it's supposed to be. It only makes sense. I know it's supposed to be that way, and they were proving it. So I have a great deal of respect. I don't know how we got into this thing, but I have a great deal of respect for underwater birthing, and the possibility of having dolphins there at the same time is truly remarkable. I know that in Russia, I've also seen the movies of this. They have babies that sleep on the bottom of swimming pools. They literally sleep on the bottom of the pool, underwater. And about every, I think it's 18 minutes, they come up while they're asleep, roll, take a breath, go back down and go to sleep again. And they can sleep. It's either 15 or 18 minutes. It's at least 15 minutes that they can stay on the bottom of the pool. Dolphins can stay 20-something minutes, I think it is, between breaths. Each one. No, these babies were not just babies. They were like 2-3 years old. They were older. They just live in water. That's their home. They just live in water. And they're being given a name. What is it? it's like a different species almost. The people are calling them Homo dolphinus or something. It's like they're a blend between them, between the two. I mean, they're just so incredible in water. It's just becoming their medium. And they're extremely intelligent, extremely intelligent. I think it's a very good trend, a very healthy trend that's happening. Though in the United States there's a lot of pressures against it. They've finally released some of it. I think you can do this now in Florida and California legally, I believe. Though around the world, you know, in New Zealand and Australia and places like this, there's lots of centers and much of it going off in Europe and everywhere else. It's getting stronger and stronger. The more